Hi BookTube, my name is Sarah and welcome to the Bookish Knitter. Today I am coming to you with a weekly reads video. This is for week number 13. It is for March the 28th through April the 3rd. So first of all, before we get into everything, happy Easter everybody. Today is the 4th of April. It is Sunday and I am sitting here with you this morning. I have got my coffee in my Peeps mug. With my Cadbury Cream Egg coffee creamer, say that 3 times fast, which has been a delightful purchase because it's super duper yummy. And yeah, I do love a big mug because what's the point of having just a little bit of coffee? You want a lot of coffee in the morning. Besides, I like a little coffee with my creamer is essentially the way that I do it. So the only reason I drink coffee is because of the delightful coffee creamers that are out there. So happy Easter. For those of you who do not celebrate Easter, happy Sunday. I do hope that you have a great day regardless. Maybe, I don't know if you're going to get to see family or not because we are still in all this stuff. And quick little bit of life stuff at the beginning here. The province of Ontario announced on Thursday that we are back in a lockdown. The entire province is in a lockdown for at least a month, so till at least May the 3rd. Now, it's not a huge change. They actually didn't state a stay-at-home order or anything like that. I will still, of course, be working from home. We had a meeting with our manager on Friday, and she's like, if you want to come in for a day, you know, just for a change of scenery, you're more than welcome to, but just let her know in advance that you're going to be in because they're only allowed so many people in the office. But I'm like, nope, I'm good. I'll sit in my bubble here at home. So no stay-at-home order, but the big thing has been like they've limited outdoor gatherings. You're not supposed to gather with people outside your home. You know, the big box stores or your grocery stores and stuff are at 50% capacity, and the non-essential retail is allowed to still be open at 25% capacity, and they've closed all bars, restaurants, and stuff like that for indoor dining. You can still get takeout, but you can't dine in, or they had patio open very briefly in Toronto. But anyway, so it's not like a huge, big, massive lockdown. Like there's still stuff that can be open and you can still kind of do things, but it's still more of they're trying to curb, like they're trying to lower the count of people ending up in hospital and in intensive care because they are being overrun right now. So that's totally understandable. And unfortunately, Canada has kind of dropped the ball, in my opinion, on the whole vaccine thing, that they are not vaccinating people fast enough. I mean, the US is just, but they're producing it, right? So that's part of it as well. But, so I'm not going to get into that whole thing. I don't, whatever. As soon as I can get vaccinated, I am. Let's just put it that way. So anyway, bigger and better and more exciting things. In lieu of Easter today, I did decide to wear my little llama earrings. I know they're not really Easter-esque, but they're llamas, so close enough. I just decided to try and be a little bit festive today, in lieu of the holiday. So, and I had Friday off of work because it was Good Friday. And I know, talking to my American friends, I thought it was just standard. It's like, like standard across the board that it was a stat holiday, but no, it's not for everybody in the States, and I didn't know that, but it is here in Canada, so I did have Friday off, so it was a long weekend, which was quite nice. But anyway, on to the books and reading and such. So I actually finished 7 books this week, you guys, 7. I was so pleased with that. I couldn't believe it. This little part of my brain, this little devil on my shoulder kind of an idea. If you guys saw my TBR that I posted last week, I talked that I have 40 books in the month of April that I want to read. This little devil on my shoulder is trying to convince me to try and read all 40. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. If I come close, I'll be really pleased, but if I don't, I don't. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But I don't know, ever since the fall, my reading had dipped. It's not like I wasn't in any kind of reading slump because I was still reading a lot. I was still reading, more than the average person, but not up to what I normally read. And I think before, a lot of what I was reading was audiobooks, and I was trying to fly through audiobooks and things like that just to keep up with the Joneses. And I've talked about this. I talked about this at the tail end of last year. I talked about this at the beginning of this year. So I'm not going to reiterate it again. But this week, 2 of the books that I finished were on audio. But 5 of them 5 were either print book or ebook, which is pretty super fantastic. So I'm really, really pleased with that. I really, really am. Now, granted, some of them were a bit shorter. One was a middle grade novel, but still, it was a really, really good reading week. So I will timestamp below. If you guys want to jump ahead to any specific reviews that you're interested in seeing, please go ahead and do that. Then I will also talk about, once I've talked about all the books, I will talk about what I'm currently reading. And then I'll show you guys a little bit of my crafting. Not a lot of crafting got done this week. Clearly it was a reading week. So yeah, so that is a good thing. So, hey, if I can keep this momentum, I will be very, very happy, which is exactly where I used to kind of sit. Anywhere between 5 and 7 books a week is what I used to do. But you know, I'm just trying to, what I think it is that I've done is that I consciously this week made an effort to take time to read. You know, like, even mid last year, like, I wasn't doing that. And with everything going on in the world and the holidays coming up, and I think everybody just kind of fell into a little bit of a funk. And maybe that's what it was. But this week I thought to myself, you know, you're working from home. There's no excuse. You know, that why I can't still take a lunch break. Like, I do take a lunch break. I do step away from my laptop on my lunch break, even though I'm working from home, and, you know, go and eat my lunch or something. But I tend to not take a book with me, which is what I would do at work. If I was in the office, I would be having a book and I'd have that whole hour to sit and read. And I wasn't doing that working from home. So I've this week made that conscious effort that this week over my lunch break, I'm going to sit and read for at least 45 minutes. That has made a huge, huge difference. The other thing that I have done is, in case you guys are interested, if not, feel free to forward on to the reviews, is that in the mornings when I get up, instead of getting up and rushing, because I really don't have any need to rush in the mornings. I don't actually start work till 11 o'clock, but I'm still up between 7 and 8. So I generally take about a half an hour in the mornings and I'll sit and read a book. I do plug in my audiobook before I start work, like from like 9 till like 10:30ish. I'll sit and listen to my audiobook, and I'm currently trying to catalog all of these books I have back here, the huge Harlequin book haul that I had, and I'm trying to organize my Harlequin shelves. So I listen to my audiobook while I'm doing that in the mornings lately. But I am trying to take an extra like 20 minutes to a half an hour in the morning to literally just sit quietly and just read either an ebook or a print book. And then the other thing is at night. The one thing that, and I think all of us are guilty of this, is that, you know, we start watching something on Netflix or on whatever. And for me on Amazon Prime, I've been working my way through the X-Files. I've been working my way back through Law & Order again, and Law & Order Criminal Intent, and The Golden Girls. Like, I've been, you know, like I pick like one episode from each every night and I kind of watch them all. And that's what I would do, is just watch them back to back to back. Well, watching Krista over at Books and Jams, she talks about the fact that what she does is she'll do a task and then she'll set a timer and read for 15 or 20 minutes. And that's what I've now started to do. So I'll watch an episode of The X-Files and then I will set a timer on my phone for 20 minutes and I'll read for 20 minutes. Then when that 20 minutes is over, I'll put the book down and then I can watch an episode of Law & Order. That episode of Law & Order is done, I'll do the same thing. So that's kind of, in a way, giving me another hour or so at night of reading. And then I try and read a little bit before bed. So I think that's what it is. And it's not like I feel like I'm sitting there and like, okay, you've got to read for the next 2 hours. It's in chunks and it works well for me. Now, there are some people who just want to sit and read a book and they don't want to do anything else. They just want to sit and read. And that's fine. You know, everybody's different, but for me, it's kind of working in these little chunks. And I do the same thing also when I was watching, on Friday, I was watching a lot of BookTube videos. I was doing the same thing. I would watch a BookTube video and then set my timer for 15 minutes, read for 15 minutes, and then watch another BookTube video, or depending on the length of the BookTube video, watch 1 or 2, and then read for 15 minutes or something like that. So I don't know, everybody's different, but this seems to be working for me. And clearly, I mean, I'm very pleased with my reading this week. So yay on that one. Anyway, I've been rambling on now for almost 10 minutes. Let's get into the book, shall we? So the first book that I finished this week was Hunting a Killer by Nicole Helm. I gave this book 4.5 stars. I really, really loved it. This was the 4th and final book in the Tactical Crime Division Traverse City series. So I have completed this series. I started and finished it in the month of March. So yay. I did finish this book in March. All but the last 2 books were March finishes. So this was a Harlequin intrigue novel, number 1977. It was published originally in February of 2021. It is, of course, a romantic suspense novel, and on audio, this was narrated by Cindy Kay, who narrated the entire series. I've mentioned a couple times already, I bought this entire series as a bind-up on audio, and I listened to them all that way. You can no longer get it as a bind-up. Unfortunately, I have looked on Audible, but it's not there anymore. And so yeah, but I really enjoyed listening to this. So this one was, I think, my favorite out of all 4 of the books in the series. And the reason for that is because the 2 characters in this one, Serena and Axel, are characters that you have met throughout all 4 books. Like, they were in the first 3 books in parts. Like, there were scenes with them in various times throughout the book. So you really got to know these 2 characters. And I think that's what made this one my favorite, because you kind of really knew them going into it. Do you know what I mean? So she is a dog handler, and I think he is like kind of the unofficial leader of the team. And the case on this one, and what I really liked about this series as well, is that all 4 books, you could read them all independently of each other and not have to read them back to back to back the way I did. You could just pick one up that sounds good to you, and you'd probably be perfectly fine without having the backstory of the rest of the books. Although I have to say, maybe this last one, you should at least read the first 3 and then get to this one. But the first 3, I think, can be independently read on their own. So this one is about a prison break, and they are hunting, essentially, a killer, as the title suggests. And it's actually Serena's half-brother, who is the guy who escaped from jail. So the story kind of goes from there. I don't want to give too much away. Again, this is a romantic suspense. It was really good. I really, really enjoyed it. I recommend this whole series. If you get a chance to read it, it is super, super fantastic. The next book that I finished was another mystery, and this is a cozy mystery, and this was Grounds for Murder by Tara Lush. This book I gave 4 stars to. This was a NetGalley read, so thank you very much to the publisher, Crooked Lane Books, for sending me an e-art copy of this book to read and review for you guys. This is the first book in a new series called A Coffee Lover's Mystery Series. And the second book does not come out till December of this year, I think. So you guys have lots of time to go and pick this one up if you're interested. This one was published in December of 2020 originally. So it sounds like they're coming out like once a year maybe. And as I said, this was a cozy mystery. This one takes place in a location called Devil's Beach, Florida, which is on the Gulf of Mexico side of Florida, down south, like in the southern area. And it's about our main character, Lana, who was an investigative reporter up in Miami. And she was married to this other reporter guy. And they actually refer to him in the book as he's kind of turning more and more into Ron Burgundy. But he's like very debonair and very like all the ladies love him kind of an idea. And he was cheating on her. So she left him. They ended up getting divorced. She ended up coming back home. And her mother had passed a few years earlier, and her mother ran this coffee shop. So Lana has taken over the coffee shop. Her dad's very kind of stuck in the 60s, if you will. He does yoga and meditation. And like, not that there's anything wrong with that, but he's very much that island beach kind of going with the flow kind of guy. And he works at the coffee shop, but he doesn't really have an interest in running it the way Lana does. So essentially what happens is there's a guy who works for Lana named Fab. And he ends up getting killed. He's the murderee. The murdered? I don't know. How do you say that? The victim. He's the victim. And so she's actually kind of in a way being looked at as a potential suspect in his murder. So she's trying to, of course, clear herself, which is usually the way these go in a cozy mystery series, is that our lead character usually ends up being like a suspect. But then now she's trying to find out what happened to him. So that's pretty much the gist of the book. What I liked about this one, and this is something that not everybody is going to like. So again, I do like to mention this because if this was somebody else reading this who was more of a, who liked their cozy mysteries a little bit more cozy, might not really like, and they might give this book a much lower star rating. And I looked at that on Goodreads, and a lot of people did rate this one a bit lower because it does have a lot of sexual innuendo, a lot. And it also talks about drinking and drug use. The father smokes pot. He says it's for his glaucoma. I think it's funny. I just, I live in a country where it's perfectly legal up here to do so. Not for me. I have better things to spend my money on. Books and coffee. But I don't judge anybody. Each to their own. as long as you stay safe. But it does talk about that, so like this isn't your typical, this almost feels like a bit more adult cozy mystery, if you will, because it's not all, and I'm not trying to paint cozy mysteries as being all sunshine and rainbows and unicorns, because of course they deal with murder. But I notice that they tend to steer away from certain topics. And if drug use or alcohol is mentioned, it's usually to make the murdered person or the guilty person seem like a bad person. I'm trying not to generalize, but that's what I've noticed from some of them. Whereas this case, Lana and her friend, they go to the bar and have a couple drinks, and that's perfectly fine. Her father smokes pot for his glaucoma. That's fine. Like, excuse me. Each to their own, right? So do take it with a grain of salt, depending on what your personal preference is in your cozy mysteries. But I really did enjoy this one. The next one that I finished was a middle grade. So for something a lot different from the last one, we have The Sea in Winter, and this was by Christine Day. You guys, this book was so good. I gave this one 5 stars. This was originally published in January of 2021. It is a middle grade fiction book, and I read this one for middle grade March. This book was so sweet, like so adorably sweet and poignant, and I think it's really something that every middle grader should read along with the adults. Like, if you guys love middle grade books, check this one out. So this is the story of Maddie. Is it Maddie? Maisie, excuse me, it's Maisie. So Maisie, I think, is about 12 years old, and it's the beginning of winter break. So the story is told in, like, not diary formats, but it tells you what day it is. So as it goes through, and the chapters in this are really, really short, like only just a few pages each. So this was really what I like to call potato chip reading, where it's like, I'll just read one more chapter, kind of an idea. And anyway, so it starts out, it's the beginning of midwinter break in her school. And Maisie is Native American. Both of her Indigenous, excuse me. Both of her parents are Indigenous. And there's a lot of Indigenous culture in this book weaved throughout the story, and I love that so much. I think it is absolutely wonderful, some of the history and the background, and there is a fantastic author's note at the back, you guys. Like, I mean, like, it's like, a novella of author's note. Like, that is the author's note in the back. So talking about some of the events and stuff that there are talked about in this book. So beyond that, though, so like I said, it's the beginning of midwinter break, and Maisie and her parents and it's actually her mom and her stepdad and her brother's name is Connor. And I'm not going to get into the stepfather situation. It's when you find out what happened to the dad, like to Maisie's dad, it breaks your heart. But anyway, so they're going on this road trip. And Maisie has kind of been in a funk. Number of months earlier, back in the summertime, I think, she was a ballerina and she was dancing and she tore her ACL, which is something in her knee. I think, did they say ACL? I think it was. But anyway, she had to have surgery and she goes to physiotherapy. And her big goal is to get dancing again. But she's depressed because she can't dance. It's the only thing she loved doing. All of her friends are in the dance group. She doesn't have any friends at school. So she's going on this trip with her parents and her younger brother. And then, throughout the course of the story, you begin to realize that perhaps Maisie is suffering from depression. And, also growing up and finding out what it is that you want to do and, trying to fit in. Trying to find a place to fit in, which, I think a lot of us can remember being a very difficult thing when we were younger. You love doing this, but is this really what you're going to do for the rest of your life, kind of an idea. It was a really poignant story. I loved it so much. I really highly encourage everybody to read this one. Like I said, stuff is revealed throughout the course of the story about what happened to Maisie's dad and what happened to her parents, like her mom and her stepdad growing up, what their lives were like, living in a reservation and things like that. It was really, really great for culture, really great for talking about mental illness, and yeah, absolutely fantastic, and I highly, highly recommend it. So yeah, I think this was my favorite book of the month. So spoiler alert for when I do my wrap up. I think that one even topped Alone. And it's funny, the 2 books I read for middle grade March were my 2 favorite books of the month. So I guess that's not really funny, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just interesting. But this one, as much as I love the book Alone, this one I think was my number 1 of the month. The next book that I finished was another cozy mystery, and that was Live and Let Chai by Bree Baker. I gave this book 4 stars. This is book number 1 in a Seaside Cafe mystery series. The original publication date on this one was July of 2018. Again, as I said, it's cozy mystery. I read this one for March Mystery Madness. So I think that there is now 7 books, or the 7th book is being published later this summer. And rumor has it the author, or not rumor has it, but I saw on Instagram that the author, who's actually Julianne Lindsey, this is one of her pen names, she's working on the 8th and final book in the series, which makes me sad because it's such a great series, but I totally get it, and I love the fact that she gets the ability to write the last book, because a lot of the times that isn't the case. You know, with these longer running series, something happens and suddenly they can't publish that last book and you can't wrap things up. So she said in her Instagram post that she is going to get everything wrapped up, which is great. But anyway, this is the story of Everly, and Everly runs the Sun, Sand, and Tea Shop in this tiny little coastal town in South Carolina called Charm. And I have read now the first book, because I hadn't read the first book yet, but I think I've read 2, 3, and 4. So I think 5 and 6 I still need to read, and then 7 once it's published. So I'm about halfway through the series at this point. But anyway, I'm glad I went back and read this one. So in this one, a local kind of older gentleman who isn't the most friendly guy in the world. He's trying to stop all the development from Charm. He wants to keep the town as it is. Kind of an idea. He ends up getting murdered, and he's murdered after drinking some of Everly's tea. So, of course, again, as I mentioned about the grounds for murder one, she is also now a suspect in the murder. So she's trying to clear her name, and there is a cop who's just moved to town. His name is Grady, and there's going to be a relationship there. What I love so much about this series is the town itself is just a delight. I mean, it's just I want to visit there. It's like one of those, like, you know, South Carolina beach towns that just sounds delightful. It's on the Outer Banks, I believe. And the aunts, though, her aunts are just delightful. There is reference in this story. Her name is Everly Swan, and they say a swan woman has never left the island or something like that. So the aunts have lived there their whole lives, and it draws a bit of reference, like they even say in the book, something about the Salem witch trials, and that's where they're descended from, are those people and stuff like that, like the people who were accused in the Salem witch trials. I really had a practical magic feeling with this book. I have to say, I really, really did. I know that might sound silly, but the ants really gave me that feeling. And not the book, I've read the book Practical Magic and didn't care for it, but the movie is one of my favorites. But that's kind of what they reminded me of their characters from the movie. But yeah, this was absolutely delightful. It is a great, great cozy mystery series. If you are looking for something to read this summer and binge your way through, I highly recommend it. It was a delight. I did listen to this one on audio as well. Oh, I'm sorry, I listened to 3 audiobooks this week and read 4 books. I just realized that. But this one was narrated by Therese Plummer, and it was really good. I enjoyed it a lot. Again, 4 stars. Highly recommend this series. Go and check it out. Next up, I read a contemporary romance novel, and that was Wrong Turn by Samantha Chase. I gave this book 4 stars as well. This is book number 2 in the Road Trippin' series. Publication date of May of 2020. And this I read for the Pass the Parcel Challenge, which I'm participating in over on the Romance Readers Reading Group on Goodreads. It is a challenge that you need to sign up in advance for. I'm part of a team. Every week you get a new kind of prompt, and this one was to read a book tagged adventure, and this one was tagged as romance adventure, or has something about adventure in the back of the book or something like that. So this is the second book in the series. I have read the first one, and this is a series that is not connected as I understand it. Like, I don't see the connection between book 1 and book 2. But in this one, our main characters are Chelsea and Drew. And essentially, their best friends are getting married. And Chelsea and Drew don't get along, and nor do they like the other significant other. Like, let me rephrase that. So Chelsea doesn't like the guy that her best friend is with, and like Drew's best friend, and vice versa, right? So they're not happy with each other's best friends' choices, essentially. So then last minute they find out, or she finds out, Chelsea finds out that Bridget, which is her best friend, is marrying Jimmy, which is Drew's best friend, in a secret ceremony in South Carolina. So she says to Drew, you got it, we're going to go there. So he's supposed to try and keep her away. And then they decide to do this road trip. So they go on this road trip to go to South Carolina to try and stop the wedding. And that's essentially the plot of the book. I don't want to give any more than that away, because that's more than I even knew going into it. But I do love Samantha Chase's writing. It is absolutely fabulous. And this book had all of the things. It had a road trip romance. It had enemies to lovers. It had the whole stopping the wedding trope. It was an absolute delight. And Chelsea is actually an audiobook narrator. She talks about it in the book, but she narrates nonfiction, like Civil War stuff. So it's really delightful, and I really, really love this one. There's just something about a road trip romance that just makes me all kinds of happy, and you need to check out the series. There's only 3 books in it, so if you are a fan of, road trip kind of romances, all 3 of the books in the series are based on that. So it's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend it. The next book I finished was the first book that I finished in April, and that was How Sweet It Is by Robin Lee Hatcher. This book I gave 3.5 stars to. This was a NetGalley read, so thank you very much to the publisher Thomas Nelson for sending me an e-art copy of this one to review. This is book 3 in the Legacy of Faith series, third and final book, I might add. And this was originally published in July of 2020. Catching up on those NetGalley reads. This was an inspirational romance. And I read this one on audio, and it was narrated by Wendy Lanzell and Van Tracy. So I have not read the first 2 books in this series. And again, an inspirational romance, so this is very much a faith-based story. I enjoyed it. I mean, 3.5 stars is not too bad. So the main story is about Holly and Jed. And it takes place in Boise, Idaho, and he has come to town because he's looking for his brother. His brother, they have a family company, I think something with video games. And the brother took off, and they don't know where he is, so Jed has come out to try and locate him. And when he comes to town, he meets Holly. And, him and Holly kind of start this relationship. So that's one part of the story. The other part of the story is actually being told in a dual timeline. So what you're following is, the other part is what you're following is Jed's great-grandfather named Andrew. And supposedly, from my understanding now from looking at reviews, is that Andrew, the great-grandfather story, started in book 1. So you're kind of tracing him throughout the Great Depression and then into, I think, the Vietnam War time period era. I think right from when Andrew was a little boy up until his children or his grandchildren are getting married, kind of an idea. So I do want to go back and read the first 2, mainly because I want Andrew's story. I will be honest with you guys. Holly and Jed lacked a bit for me. Their relationship. It was, if the story had just been about them, I would not have been interested at all, because there wasn't enough of their story to sustain an entire novel, which is why I like the fact that what's her name again? Robin Lee Hatcher, excuse me, that she put this secondary story in of Andrew and his family. I thought that was wonderful. There's some so sad moments that happen for Andrew. He's getting older, his wife is getting older, and I don't want to give any spoilers away, so I'm not going to. But, he gets to see he gets to see, I think, his great-grandchild be born or something like that. So, and then the first 2 books are other great-grandchildren of his, of Andrew's. So I really love that whole family tied part of it. I think that's wonderful. And all this stuff is kind of traced through this family Bible, which is very, very sweet. Again, I am not someone where those are not my beliefs personally, but I understand the importance of them. I understand how important they are to some people, and how poignant this is, and things like that. And it was wonderful. It was a very, very sweet story. I mean, it wasn't a 4-star or anything like that. It was perfectly adequate. It was very enjoyable. And again, I preferred the Andrew part of the story over the other 2 characters. And like I said, I do want to go back and read the first 2 so I can find out, Andrew's kind of story as it goes through, because that's what I enjoyed a lot more. And then the very last book that I finished this week was The Last Carolina Sister by Michelle Major. I have it here on paperback. I knew this was going to be my first physical book or ebook of the month, and I was going to get a copy of it on ebook, and then I'm like, I wanted to see. Amazon had no copies of this, and Chapters Indigo did, and I went and picked it up same day. So I picked this up on the 31st of March, the day after it came out, and I wanted to read it because I love these. Like, they're called Mass Market Max, I think. And they're just a little bit bigger than a typical mass market paperback. So anyway, really enjoyable read. So this one I gave 4.5 stars to. This one is a NetGalley read, so thank you very much to Harlequin or HQN for sending me an e-arc copy of this one to review. So I did have the e-arc, but, and like I said, I was going to buy an ebook copy because oftentimes, you know, if I'm reading something after it's been published, I generally try to borrow a copy of it or what have you, because a lot of the times the e-arcs are not formatted really great, and it's kind of, it slows down my reading. So anyway, that's just me. This is the third and final book in the Magnolia Sisters series, and it was published, as I said, on March 30th, 2021, contemporary romance. So this is the final book in the Magnolia Sisters series. There is a novella as well. In this book, there is a little 40-page novella called A Carolina Valentine, which you can also purchase separately if you're so inclined. But I don't know if it's in the e-copy as well. No, it is in the e-copy as well, because I checked just out of curiosity. So you don't have to buy it separately if you buy this book. But what I would suggest, and I didn't know this, is this is a series I really feel like you should read in order. I love the sisters, Avery and Carrie, and Meredith. This is Meredith's story. So the whole backstory for this entire series is that Avery, Carrie, and Meredith are half-sisters. They all share the same father. They did not know that until the beginning of the first book, when the father passes away, and in his will, they find all this out. And Avery lives way on the West Coast. She was in San Francisco, I think. And Carrie and Meredith actually grew up in the same town. Carrie knew who her father was because that was her dad. Like, that was her mom and dad. But what they didn't know was that he was kind of going all over town, and he also had a relationship with Meredith's mother, which resulted in Meredith. And then, of course, went on a business trip out west, resulting in Avery. So the sisters find out that they're sisters, and the first book, there's a lot of animosity, and it's Avery's story. The second book, which is a Christmas book, I read it the tail end of last year, I really loved, was Carrie's story, and now we're on to Meredith. So Meredith, I think, is my favorite sister. She is an animal lover. She gives everything, like the shirt off of her back, to help anyone, especially the animals. She runs an animal rescue called Forever Friends, and she ends up having a relationship with her temporary next door neighbor named Ryan. And Ryan is a doctor, and he is down from DC. He was involved in a shooting in the hospital. Like, that's not giving anything away. You find that out at the beginning of the book. That there was a gunman that came into the emergency room, and he ended up getting shot, and one of his colleagues and friends ended up dying. So he's recuperating from his injury along, not only his physical, but his emotional injuries. And he meets Meredith, and the two of them kind of start a relationship, and the story goes from there. I don't want to give too much more than that away. It was a really, really good story. But now, as I was saying, I recommend that you read this series in order, but here's my recommendation. Read the first book, Avery's story, then read Carrie's story, then read the novella. Read A Carolina Valentine, okay? Read that one, then read this one last, because A Carolina Valentine, the two characters that are that story's couple, the novellist's couple, appear in this book as a couple, like after that. So that novella should be read first. So the novella, I don't know if it's tagged on Goodreads as this, but in my opinion, it should be 2.5. So you got book 1, book 2, book 2.5, and then book 3. So that's my recommendation if you haven't picked up this series yet. But it was an absolute delight. I have loved this series so much. If you love small town romance, you're going to really enjoy this one. And she's got another one that's coming out in May, her next book, which is called Wildflower Season, which is the Carolina Girls series. This is the Magnolia Sisters series. And it features one of the characters that you meet in this story. So that you meet briefly towards the end. And I will be reading that book this month as well. I am going to read the e-arc copy of it, and I cannot wait. So I will, of course, update you guys when I've read it. But yeah, I really, really love this one, and I highly recommend you go ahead and pick up a copy for yourself. So that is all that I finished this week, you guys. 7 books. 7 books. I cannot believe it. I'm so pleased with that number. It's just a good number. It's a book a day. I can math. So what am I currently reading? So on audio, I am currently listening to Sacred Evil by Heather Graham, which is the third book in the Crew of Hunters series. This is being narrated by Luke Daniels. Jeff Daniels is an actor. I always get the two confused. By Luke Daniels. And he narrates pretty much all of the Crew of Hunters series. So this one takes place in New York City. And I've only just started it. I'm not that far into it. I'm about 20-ish% of the way through it. I started it yesterday. And it is about a Jack the Ripper type killer in New York City. And of course the Crew of Hunters are going to come in and investigate. And I'll update you guys more next week with my final thoughts on that one. And then the other book that I'm currently reading on ebook is SVU Surveillance. I always want to say SUV. SVU Surveillance, and this is by Julianne Lindsey. And this is the first book in the Heartland Heroes series. So it is about our main character named Gwen, who 6 years earlier while in college was the victim of a brutal rape. And Lucas is an SVU detective. And they, when they were in college together, they were engaged. And then after this attack, she kind of drew back from everybody, and the engagement was kind of, put off, or like they stopped the engagement and stuff like that. And now they haven't seen each other in 6 years, and now someone is stalking her. So she comes to him for help. And I'm about a quarter of the way through this right now. Now, this coming Wednesday, over on Nicole, who picked this book's channel, me and Nicole and Jen, and I think one other person, I can't remember who, I apologize, are going to be talking about this book. So if you are interested to hear all of our thoughts on it, please join that live show. I think it's at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll have to double check so I'm not late. But I, of course, will talk about it next week in this video, like in these videos. But in case you kind of want to join us for a live show to talk about it, that'll be a lot of fun. So I'll be doing that next week. So that's everything that I am currently reading. Only just the 2 books. Perfectly fine. I did try to do the 3, like have an ebook, an audiobook, and a print book, and it was just too much. Ebook or an audiobook and a print or ebook is enough for me at a time. But I do have some crafting to show you guys. I got a little bit done this week, not a lot. Clearly I was doing a lot more reading than crafting. But I've gotten some more work done on my sock. So there's where I was last week when I showed you guys. And here I am now. So I've gotten that. I'm still working on the leg. So it's going to, of course, go this way. Right? So the leg of the sock. I want to make this long because I usually have a lot of yarn left from a ball of yarn, right? Like I usually have a lot left from a pair of socks. So I'm actually going about 1 inch or almost 2 inches longer on the leg than I normally would on a pair of socks. And that's because I do like a long sock. I am one of those people. I just like a long, tall sock. So yeah, so this one's going to take a little bit longer to do, but that's okay. This is perfect X-Files, Law and Order, watching TV, knitting, and I enjoy it a great deal. So yeah, I am liking that one a lot. I didn't do anything on the shawl this week. So again, the yarn is from Knitted Wit Sock, and it is Paxi is the colorway. And the pattern that I am doing for the sock itself is called Blueberry Waffles, and all that will be linked below for you guys, in case you're interested in checking it out for yourself. So the other thing I've gotten a bit of work done this week on, and I'm almost done, is my cross-stitch piece that I showed you guys last week. So normally I wouldn't work on one project for an entire week. I like to skip around in cross-stitch projects, like work on one for 2 or 3 days and then move to a different one. Because I have about 6 or 8 pictures or cross-stitch pieces that I'm currently working on. But because this one is a stitch along, I really want to get it done before the next one comes out. The next one's not due to come out till the 25th of April. So I do have lots of time. But when this is released, I want to get it stitched, and then I'm ready to go. Then I've got 3 weeks or so before the next one comes out. So this is from the Frosted Pumpkin Stitchery, and it is their cafe something. I can't remember, the cafe stitch along, but that's how much I now have done, you guys. Isn't it adorable? So you can see, so there's kind of a border here, but the border, there'll be another piece that goes over here. And so this is the mug. It's raspberry mocha. So there's the little raspberry. Now this piece is meant to have beading in it, like pretty beads, but I don't like beads. It's not my thing, so I'm just not adding the beads in. Some people are, I am not. So this is the mug with a little panda bear, and there's the handle, and then up here it's like the whipped cream frothing stuff, and then there's going to be 2 more raspberries. that are going to go there. That's what I need to fill in there. And then I need to put the words in that says raspberry mocha. And then the title of the whole thing goes up here. So that's still what I need to finish. And I'm going to try and get that done today, but we shall see. So yeah, so that's what I've been doing on my crafting. Yeah, and that's about it, you guys. Don't have very much else to share with you. I hope you guys are all staying safe and staying healthy and all those good things and getting lots of good reading done. And yeah, so next week coming up, I am going to be doing my wrap up for the month of March. Very pleased with the books I got finished in March. And I'm not sure what other video I have to film for that. I'm not doing any more filming today. This is going to be it. And then I'm going to kind of relax for the rest of the day. Get this edited and uploaded for you guys. But yeah. So again, happy Easter, everybody. Cheers. And I hope that you guys have a great day. And I will talk to you all in my next video. Take care and happy reading, everybody. Bye.